It's a big day today. Today we get a new galley. Ooh. We have Hans coming in with our fake Korean, who's going to be putting in a new countertop. So just to speed things along a bit, I thought I'd start taking apart some of the older fittings, which obviously we've got to refit. I just thought it was worth mentioning the sink. I've noticed on both the head sink and also in the galley, there are 4 retaining bolts that sit underneath the sink. So if ever you try and remove a sink and you can't get it out, it could be because you have these things. So the idea is these clip into the side of the sink like so, and then you screw this up from the underneath, and this pushes it up and it holds the sink in place. We've got 4 of them. 3 of them I've taken out. One of them seems to be bent, which is making it rather difficult to remove, but just be aware of those. Obviously we've got the 2 hand pumps. These are the manual pumps, which every boat should have. One is for fresh, one is for salt. Just in case the electrics go down and your pump goes down, you still have access to your drinking water. We'll talk a bit more about what Hans is up to, and also the different sink that we've gone for. And I just hope to God that I've got my measurements right, because of course underneath that sink sits our fridge compressor, so we need to be a bit clever about how we plumb in the drain pipe. So now that we've got the sink out, this gives us much better access to the taps and the various hoses. One of these I had to actually take apart. Sorry, this is the manual pump. These are these quick locking features, and unfortunately the way that I'd put it in last time meant that I couldn't get access to it from underneath, but these things actually pull apart, so I was able to take that apart. And it also gives us a chance to inspect some of the Jubilee clips or hose clamps on some of our fittings, and of course there is a little bit of corrosion in some of them, so if I can I'll try and replace them with the much more robust D clamps, what we call D clamps. They're much better than hose clamps, they last a lot longer and they hold better as well, so probably replace those whilst we've got everything out. What do you think, Hans, for the camera?
Yeah, let's see. Just trim it a little bit there. Should go in.
So it's just the corner there, it's not sitting right?
Yeah, I think it is. This fiddle here is actually a little bit thicker right there, because it doesn't touch anywhere else, just up in the corner there. Just straight, so it should go right.
So Hans has just offered up the sink into its position, having cut away just a little edge just to drop it into the gap that's already there from the previous sink, and dry laid the countertop over the top. It's looking really good. One of the issues that we knew we would have is the support of the sink. Because it sits in the hole of the previous sink, obviously it's a different shape, and currently it's only being supported at the very edges. So Hans is now looking at a way of creating some kind of support that he can put in underneath just to hold it on 4 sides. By the way, one thing I do find encouraging is when a carpenter or anyone comes in having pre-cut some work, puts it in place and it fits first time. That always gives me a bit of encouragement. This happened when Hans did our head's floor. I'm not sure if I've shown you that yet, but he came in and he said, I'm just going to put it in place just to see if I need to trim any sides, and it fitted perfectly. Same can be said for this countertop as well, so that's always good. It's a good sign.
The galley is the beating heart of the boat, isn't it?
It is. It's where I do all the cooking.
You're right. Okay, so what I wanted to say was that it looks easy, but getting hold of that sink wasn't easy. I was tasked with the job of sourcing it, and the problem was that we couldn't go too deep, obviously, as Jamie has explained, and finding one that was going to fit precisely into that hole turned out to be completely impossible. That's because we're here in Sabah, Borneo, not so easy. So I had to reconsider it, and I said to you, what about if we just lose the second sink? Yes, let's do that, great. Easier to find a square sink, again, couldn't find one that was the right depth until I just happened across that round one. So that was a whole new, completely different look to what we had originally been intending, and I love it, don't you?
It's brilliant. It frees up so much more space. That's the first thing. Much more room to prepare food. And secondly, you know, that second sink, we ended up just using it as a storage container for, you know, detergent sprays and sponges.
I spent all my life bloody cleaning it out because it was always full of gunge. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, the draining system of that double sink underneath was also a pain in the bum because it was all custom put together with bits and pieces. So
and it bunged up, didn't it?
Yeah, I have to say, actually, having now watched the finished version and having taken those photos, it really shows up our tired laminate around the rest of the galley. I mean, that's another project for another day. But,
we'll do it, but not yet.
Yeah, it's great. I love it.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to bring up from that segment is the fact that we use those two hand pumps, because some people may be wondering why we bother with them, but they are really important, not here in the marina, but they are important to anchor. Two reasons. I use the seawater hand pump for just cleaning things out before I rinse them out with proper water from the tank. So seawater's free, just pump it in, clean off the plates, clean off the surfaces, anything you like, and then a bit of spray, and then clear rinsed water straight from the tanks. So yeah, that's really important for the seawater. Rambling a bit. And then the fresh water. Why do we have a fresh water? Well, supposing the electricity goes down, supposing the pump stops working, we can still easily get hold of our fresh water. It also stops, you don't have to use the pump, less electricity being used, kinder to the batteries. Also, it's quiet. So there you go. I think they're really important. Now we're going to have a look at what we did in the heads.
So here we are in the heads, probably an angle you've never seen before. Just before hands turned up, I had to remove the old sink. The reason why we're changing the sink is because it got some rust from it started rusting from the underside. But when I removed the sink, that rust had actually run all the way around the rim, so it had rusted all the way underneath. So we're doing the right thing. Managed to get the sink out okay. The tap was a bit more difficult. You've got three connections there, the hot and cold water feed, and then you've got the hose. The idea is this hose can pull out and be used as a shower. So all of these had to be disconnected in a certain way that you don't twist the braided rubber hose for the hot and cold water. The most important thing, however, was hands being able to remove the old corian. So it was a corian-like composite material that the previous guys had glued down onto a shelf. And two things were of a concern. A, that we could actually get this out without breaking the shelf that it sits on. And then secondly, to not destroy the laminate that we've got running up the side, that lovely green, sick green laminate that runs up the side there. And I'm happy to report that Hans was able to remove it all. So that's good news, and we didn't destroy anything, in fact. So that's great. So he's nipped off now to go and get the new piece of corian. Now he hasn't put in the new hole yet for the sink because we haven't decided the position of the sink. We couldn't do that until we removed the old one. So that's the stage we're at now. Okay, so Hans has managed to size up the corian. He's got to go away and drill the big hole to accommodate the sink. While we're here, I thought I would just have a look at the shower pump. Now, the shower pump is something that we kind of decommission because we tend to shower on the back of the boat. But of course, if we go to somewhere like Japan, we may find that it will be too cold to shower outside, or we could be somewhere in public. So we need to have a look at this pump, and the idea is that this pump sits under the sink. The issue is that once the sink is in situ, it's going to be very difficult to get to this pump should it break down. So what I'm trying to do is to find a position for the pump, and at the moment you can probably see there's a great big hole there which gives me easy access, but I'm trying to practice taking the hoses on and off the pump from through the cupboard, because once that sink is in place, that is going to be the only way I'm going to be able to access that pump. So I'm just jiggling around some hoses at the moment to recommission them, and yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. Well, that was a revolutionary change, wasn't it?
Yeah, because you put those shots in at the end. We didn't really explain why and how we ended up with the sink that we did. Very different to the first one, which was oval and down. Whereas this looks like a countertop sink, which it is, but it's actually a countersunk countertop sink. Do you want to explain?
Well, really, it actually, believe it or not, it actually frees up space underneath. So it's countersunk by about so much, whatever that is, a few centimetres. Yeah. So it's solidly in place. I have seen countersunk sinks mounted on the countertop on boats. It can be done, but we just felt it was a little bit safer. But I think more importantly, we're actually able to keep our existing tap, which we didn't want to change.
Yeah, that was important, yes, because that tap, it has a shower on it, so you can use it for all kinds of things, and it comes up quite steeply, so in order for it to get over that lip and for it to be usable, that's why we took the countertop and pushed it down a bit so it all fits nicely. It's also given us a much deeper sink, so because it goes right down under the counter, you can't really see from the photos, but we've got a lot of area now, a nice big sink. I can even do the washing in there, and you can half fill it with water, and it's not going to slop over the side like it used to.
That was one of the problems with the old sink, was that it was so shallow that if you did fill up the sink for whatever reason, the water would always slop over the sides, and obviously eventually it got in underneath that rim. By the way, you couldn't see that rust because it was happening behind and underneath, and it wasn't until we started getting rust appearing on the surface that when we took it out, it had already rusted all the way around the rim. So this new solution will get around that problem.
And it's made of vitreous china, which is great, just as strong as the toilet, and it won't rust. We don't really know what it is, but we know it's what toilets are made of, so we know it's if it can take his weight in the toilet, it'll be a bloody strong sink.
What, are you planning to sit on the sink?
No, I'm not. Okay, so that's the heads. Really, really happy with that. We both love it in there. It's all clean, it's lovely, it's easy to use. Now, Jamie, what were you doing in the lazarette?
Well, in the last episode, I was halfway through installing the AIS. So this is me just finishing off in the lazarette and finally installing the AIS antenna. Well, I have been at it for, I don't know, it's coming up to 4 o'clock this afternoon. I've been at it all day. My Fitbit says I've done over 200 zone minutes today alone. So I've obviously been having a good workout, which is good because I've been a lazy bastard these last couple of weeks. So I just thought I'd show you the magic of degreaser. This is my working area. There we go. My favourite place on the boat. I'm guessing what has happened is one of the oil cans did come loose. I noticed one of the oil cans had already been opened, so I suspect it fell over, and we just got oil everywhere and got this scum line all the way through the lazarette. In fact, it's so bad it actually smells like rotting flesh. It's horrible. But yeah, I just wanted to show you what degreaser can do. Here comes an aeroplane. It's that time in the afternoon. But look at this. So it's not complete yet. Now you can see that kind of dirt you can see in there. That was all over here, and if I'm honest, the dirt wasn't just the leaking oil can. I haven't actually cleaned inside here for a long time. Problem with our lazarette is that it does get water. This hatch here, if you have a look, this overflows with water very quickly, and the drain holes don't drain quick enough, so I think this overflows from the inside. So we end up with a lot of water anyway. What happens is it tends to get a bit mouldy in here, so that's why everything we stow in the lazarette has to be waterproof or, you know, impervious to water. And over the months, you know, it develops this sort of, well, mouldy, grey, horrible film. And I've been lazy, I admit. I haven't cleaned in here for some time. but that oil was a shocker. So the degreaser just cuts through it. It's like magic fairy dust degreaser. It's just cut through everything, which is great. So anyway, so this is 6 hours solid of doing runs up to the oil dump. I must have dumped about, I don't know, 20 buckets worth of oily water in there, and this is only half the lazarette. So now I'm going to let this dry out and then switch over to the other side, and this is all in preparation for putting in the AIS cable. All I was going to do was get in here, empty the lazarette and just put the cable in, but of course it's a boat, so one job always leads to another.